don't know why I
All
can't turn
right.
my volume up.
Hey,
Why it seems like
everybody,
it's so
and thank you
low.
for joining in. I have two special guests today, and possibly a third one might be joining back in when she's done doing something. But I'm going to let these two lovely young ladies introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Adasia.
Hi, I'm Adrienne.
So, the topic that I have for Adasia and Adrian today is why do Black people frown upon mental health? I'm sorry, I was making sure my phone was muted.
No, that's okay. Give me 1 second. So
Um,
there we go. All right, sorry about that.
No problem.
I don't know if you want to start, Adrian, or no, or I can start. It doesn't
yeah, you can go, sis.
matter. Okay. Um, the thing that I think that is primarily the issue is, of course, the stigma. So, especially amongst our community, anything that's related to mental health or dealing with doctors or whatever, not only is there a history of not being able to trust them because it primarily the medical field was dominated by the white, or colonizer community or whatever, but it's also that stigma that's attached to our religion, or primarily our religion now, which is Christianity. So I think that we're automatically taught to like not trust the white people and their diagnoses and their forms or approaches to treatment, and just primarily say, hey, well, you're dealing with depression, or you're dealing with anxiety, or you're dealing with the past hurts and traumas, pray it away, go to church, ask Jesus and God to take it away. And it's not as simple as that. So I think that those two are primarily the major contributor to them not going to seek out the proper help that they need. I've been working I majored in psychology, and I currently work in mental health and substance abuse. And we cover Wayne County here in Michigan at the facility that I work at. And it is very difficult to get our patients to not only follow through with their treatment plans, but for them to trust the doctors and to trust our judgment, and for them to actually open up. So it's a combination of religion, the history, as well as the way they were brought up in the home. You're taught that, hey, what happens at his home stays in his home. You don't tell anybody. You don't share your personal business. You don't tell anybody what such and such did. That's between us. We'll work it out amongst us. When in actuality, they're not equipped to properly help them process the things that they've gone through. So, and I mean, of course, once again, it goes back to our history. We were never taught to say seek help for trauma from slavery and stuff. It just became a process, just a everyday form of life or part of life. So when they didn't go to, it's like, hey, my grandmother and great grandmother got through slavery and the civil rights and this and that without any kind of counseling, and Jesus saved them, and they just went to church and prayed and they felt so much better. And that's not the truth. So, and then of course they're passing it on from generation to generation that this is how they're supposed to approach those type of issues. So when we want to step in and say like, hey, well, let's try a new way, they're not open, or receptive to that kind of outside help, because they feel that they have to not only keep it to themselves, but address it within their own households or communities, and not look for professionals to assist them.
I completely.
Sorry if that was a mouthful.
No, you're was making sure you were done, but no, I definitely agree with everything that you said. I felt like you hit on a lot of the major points that I felt, that I was thinking about, and even some things that me and Adrian were talking about before we got the video started. So, Adrian, I'll let you go.
Yes, that all of that is good and true information. That is our history. I know I'm going to agree with you and say like the trusting issue in our brown communities, African American and Hispanics, we do not trust the hospitals, because when we went to them for help, they were testing us without us knowing. They were giving us hysterectomies. They were injecting us with diseases. So why would our communities open our arms like, oh, let's change? That's a trauma. And if we aren't trained or learn to cope or how to deal and how to handle those situations, of course, we're not going to with open arms accept what the doctor says, or, it makes sense why our grandmothers don't go to the hospitals, why our grandfathers or why our men don't want to go to the hospital, with when they were injected with syphilis. with the Tuskegee Airmen, you know, so we in our communities, it's a norm. We that's why they go to religion and to church and to say, oh, if you have depression, you know, and it doesn't go away, you're not praying hard enough. I too currently work in a system of care in the state of Indiana with mental health. I work with a mental health wellness center, and our clients that are Black, we actually have a Black psychiatrist and doctors and therapists. And it's not a lot of people of color that come to them, but I'm so grateful that if they were, they go to someone who looks like themselves, where they can identify. So I think that's a big step in itself. But we don't have many that come, and then they don't trust her, because then they're like, oh, she doesn't know what she's not, you know, they don't know what they're talking about because they're Black and they're not as educated. And so it's always a trauma with us. ACE interface, the ACEs and disparities, it's very, very real. Not only with our community, it's everyone, but with our community, we don't know how to cope from those ACEs and those disparities in traumas that we go through. So being trauma informed is very important. I have a coworker who is an ordained minister, and he is really, really trying to create a movement where church, where pastors in the pulpit at the podium can just speak and preach about mental illness, so that it's normalized for the congregation, so that people know that they have options. It's with so many disparities. I mean, it's hard for people to, number one, unlearn what they've known or break tradition. They go, well, why do you do this? Because my grandmother did it, because my mom did it, because my aunt did it. And it's not a bad thing. And like, sometimes those generational curses need to be broken. But to have people to realize that they need to be broken, that's the hard part. Like, you have to want it for yourself. Someone telling them, and especially how we're very passionate in the Black community. So when you tell us something, we're defensive first, because first you're telling, you're not being, you're telling me something, you're not sharing it or feeding, it's a trigger if you're told something. So we have to show by action, and we are tough people. It takes a lot to get under our barrier, under our skin, for that trust factor to come in. Even with ourselves, you might be too light skinned for me to listen to you, or you're too dark skinned for me to listen to you. We have every excuse to not just break those, or to not listen to self. We never listen to self. We listen to tradition. It's always something outward. It's never inward. So I think if we could do that first, to kind of be compassionate with each other, understand that we all have disparities, understand, just having that understanding and showing that and sharing that. And then I think let it spread like the coronavirus. And then it's step one, when we realize it and see the benefit of the other side of the deal or the thing. I think I still have hope for us. I think therapy isn't bad, but you first have to understand where you want to be, where you are, where you need to be. It just starts with self.
Very true. For sure.
So with both of you being in the mental health field, let me ask you this. When you meet somebody that needs therapy, or you feel like they might benefit from therapy, do you go about telling them that you feel like they would benefit from therapy? And if so, how do you do it?
You mind if I take this, sis?
Go ahead.
I have. That's actually my natural approach. But again, people don't want to hear that. You can't tell someone, oh, you need. So I come with with my job and my training and my understanding of different personalities, I think if you look into studying this trait, if you see yourself, you might need help with coping skills. And if you don't think that this is you and you study this, you think you maybe not all the way, but some things that you can't relate, keep searching. I always say keep researching on yourself. You know, find yourself in some of these personalities. And then once you know yourself, you're able to handle, I think she got booted out. She'll probably return.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I do. I just tell them to find themselves in the personalities. And if someone can, like, if they're interested in studying something or researching something and they find themselves, and you can help yourself.
Yeah.
Self-help books are there, things that, or even if you need a book, once you do your research and you're like, oh, my chakras are off, or I'm imbalanced somewhere. If you learn about yourself, if you do your research, you will know, like, okay, I need to be grounded. I need to be outside with my shoes off in the grass, or I need to be in the sun to recharge. You know, you will get what you need. It will come to you. You have to look for it. You can't let somebody tell you who you are. You have to discover yourself.
So I love that you said that, because that is one thing that I try to get people to understand, because I do get a lot of people that will message me on my Facebook page and be like, hey, you know, can you teach me A, B, C, D, and E? And I don't mind. If I know the information, I don't mind. If I know how to get the information, I don't mind. But my thing is also, if I don't know the information and I can get the information, you can get the information too. So if I don't know the information and, you know, I can go through 5, 6 websites, some encyclopedias, because I'm still old school and I have encyclopedias. You know, go find a book, go find a book at the library or at Barnes and Noble. Why can't you do these same things? Why is it that we are always trying to get the easy way out? And
Instant gratification. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. And a lot of people do want the instant gratification, but at the same time, it's kind of one of those things. Like I said, if I can get this information, I know you can get this information too. Unfortunately, a lot of people, especially people of color, don't read nowadays, whether it's an actual book or whether it's online. I still have a bookshelf, an actual physical bookshelf with books on it.
Right.
Like I said, I still have a box full of encyclopedias. If I ever need them, I will pull them. I think I'm missing one out of the series. Mm-hmm. If I ever need them, I will pull them out, because that's the way that I was taught when I was younger by my dad. Mm-hmm. My dad always taught me that the smartest person isn't the person who obtains the knowledge, but the person who knows how to seek the knowledge and get it when they need it.
And utilize it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So for that to be my thing, and again, I never mind helping people. If somebody comes to me for help, whether, you know, no matter what it's about, I do not mind helping people at all whatsoever. I've got a few group chats going on. I've got a few individual chats going on Facebook where the chat is based upon me helping people. I don't mind. But like I said, at the same time, I feel like people need to learn how to study again. I feel like people need to want to have that. Yes, you have a passion for learning because you're asking me, but your passion isn't true enough because you have not picked up a book. You have not gone on this world wide web that makes everything so easy for us. You don't even have to leave out your house.
Your fingertips.
If you do not want a physical book, because I know a lot of people, what do I want a physical book for? I can get everything. Okay, well, if you can get everything on your phone, your laptop, your tablet, your whatever, then do it.
Right. Yep. I agree.
And that's what, yeah, I tell my children all the time, you got a little computer right in your hand.
Yeah.
Use your little computer.
Yeah.
But we are, excuse me, I'm old school as well. So even though I have millennials, they know what the book is. They know how to research. We have to do the thesaurus so that they can expand their vocabulary. And they're like, nobody else is doing this. I'm like, we
always have us study the dictionary. We used to have to come up with at least 20 new words a week. So, you know, my vocabulary is a lot more extensive than what I display on Facebook. But when I used to display it on Facebook, you know, people looking at me like I'm crazy because they don't understand what I'm saying. And I used to do it on purpose because, again, I feel like if I'm saying something you don't understand, then you should look it up.
Exactly.
Educate yourself. Yep.
Don't depend on me to give you all of the information.
Absolutely.
And that's a big thing. That's a big part of it. Like, no one wants to do their work. Like, that's why the weight loss industry is so big. Because hey, here's a pill, here's a shake, here's a what is it, a waist trainer.
Surgeon
Nobody wants to do the sit-ups, the push-ups. Nobody wants to do the work. They want the results. So
Right.
in the event of that, when I'm like, hey, of course, if I say, oh, you need therapy, I'll go as far as like, hey, I use a tone where it's a togetherness, like we're hand in hand, like, hey, let's look this up. Because of course, if they're coming to me and they're not going to check for themselves, and I say, well, let's do it. Maybe they need to learn it. So maybe they didn't have their dad with the encyclopedia or their mom telling them to do the thesaurus.
Right.
So I'm like, well, let's get down to this. I'll read some personality traits or disorders or things to them, and I'm like, hey, does this sound like you, or does this resonate? No. Let's go to the next one. Oh, guess what, you're a narcissist. Okay, so so just easing someone into it, and I just try to normalize it. I try not to the stigma's out there is big, and I can say, I don't even want to give them the idea of like, oh yeah, this is the stigma. I'm like, okay, we know it's out there, let's let that float in the web or whatever, in the cloud. Let's not focus on the stigma. Let's normalize it for you. Absolutely. So that you can go home and you can use this and you can attain this and you can, you resonated with it and you can change it for yourself.
Absolutely.
I don't want people, when I encounter someone and I'm, okay, everyone has trauma, everyone, especially right now, what's going on. So when they encounter me, I don't want them to think that something's wrong with them. I want them to say, okay, I'm unique. This is why. And if it's, how can I fit in with whatever, the world, or how can I be okay with myself? If I'm a narcissistic and I'm crazy, how can I be okay accepting that so that I can either warn people and say, hey, this is how I am, take it or leave it, to be okay with themselves being that way, to accept themselves as they are. Absolutely. To normalize it.
Absolutely. I agree.
So for you, Khadijah, how would you go about telling somebody that you feel like they could benefit from mental health?
My approach is very similar to what Adrienne had mentioned. My family has a little bit of a history with mental illness, but I will say that it wasn't until I started getting help myself that they became a little bit more receptive to it. My biological father actually is a paranoid schizophrenic, and I also have some relatives, some cousins who have been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia or either bipolar disorder. And before, even with that history in my family, like they knew that, I hate to say off, but they knew that something was a little off with these relatives. And they still just never, the family, they just kind of like, oh, what, that's how they are. Like, no, that's not normal for them to come tear up your house at every family gathering, when you say the buzzword or whatever, like, that's not normal.
Right.
So like, we're not gonna overlook this because now who gonna pay to get this fixed? So it wasn't. And so when I had to deal with my own mental illness itself, when I was 12 years old, unfortunately I had went through a traumatic situation where I was kidnapped, beaten, and raped, and things like that. And because that process had to go through the court, of course, the court is who had ordered me to go to see a trauma counselor, for PTSD. And in doing that, that started the ball rolling for me because I had already went through so much other stuff as far as molestation and things like that before I had even experienced the rape. So when I started that ball rolling of being comfortable, and that's why I always, Artina Mosley, I would never forget her name. Because like I said, I was 12 years old and she was a Black woman who looked like me. You know what I'm saying? She was heavy set, the gap in her teeth, whatever. And I was just like, she's beautiful and I feel comfortable talking to her. And it wasn't until I sat down and started talking to her that I was able to start pulling up all of that other stuff, just digging. Like, she was like, well, how did you feel about that? Oh, well, it's happened before because of blah, blah, blah. And I was able to start really digging in those wounds. And so she was able to go back and kind of, you know, help me learn how to not only process what's already happened to me, but to also deal with this other traumatic, you know, issue that I had experienced. And I wish I could find her. I hope she's well, you know, to this day. And of course, that was 28 years ago. But still, that was the thing and the person that I needed in my life to let me know that it's okay to seek help and to talk to people that you can trust to help you process it, even if it's nothing that you can really do about it.
Right.
Because of course, with molestation and things like that, that a lot of, you know, people have experienced, there's statute of limitation. You're not gonna prosecute your family members or whatever the case may be, but just still someone out there that says, okay, this is how you process and deal with that. Not only go on with your life, but how to now have new and healthy relationships with those individuals, because sometimes you still have to be around them, you know. So she taught me how to, you know, to deal with that and showed me the coping, you know, mechanisms and skills that I needed to go forward. So when I started doing that, then I started talking to my family about it, like, hey, well, you was there when I was being molested too, so why don't you go talk to her? You know, so that's how that approach kind of started. Like, well, you can tell her and she's not gonna tell nobody, and ain't nobody gonna really get in trouble and go to jail, but at least tell her about it so at least somebody know, you know.
Right.
And then so once that ball started rolling, then other people in my family started becoming more receptive to it, to like, okay, well, yeah, maybe being on medication ain't that bad. I'm like, okay, well, hey, I had to go on medication for a moment too. And you see, I'm not because they think like you said, that they're experimenting or you're going to be a zombie. Right. Or true, some medications may have, you know, side effects or whatever that may change that person's natural character or, you know, their behavior and everything like that. But sometimes they need that, you know, in order to heal and go through that process. Even if it's nothing long term, sometimes you need that temporarily just so it doesn't, just so your trauma and your, you know, things like that don't consume your quality of life, you know. So I had to show them, like, you know, like, hey, this stuff work. Well, I don't know if I can trust them. Then I had to start telling them that too, like, hey, well, I'm on medication for that. You're like, right. The things, the stigmas that you have attached to what I'm supposedly going to be like once I get on medication. Hey, well, I've been on this medication for a while now, and I feel comfortable sharing that with you because the things that you think is going to go wrong, have you noticed it changed in me? And they're right. Like, no, well, we didn't even know you was on it. I know. So that means that they can possibly find you something too that can help you. So once you become somewhat, you have to, and that's also with the therapy thing as well, you have to be willing to make yourself vulnerable. And a lot of people don't want to be vulnerable because they've already been in a position to where they've been taken advantage of or abused or mistreated. So the next, you know, last thing they want to do is to willingly put themselves in a position to be vulnerable with someone who could possibly do the same thing to them that they've already experienced. So, you know, I use myself as far as my family is concerned, and even sometimes with my current clients, you know, of course I don't tell them because I mean, you know, I'm supposed to tell your personal, you know, issues, but I just say, hey, somebody very close to me went through something very similar and this is what the outcome was, and hey, you've already been through this, what do you have to lose at this point? If it doesn't work, it's not like you're trapped in it, right? You can always stop it at any time, but at least just give it a try and try something new and see what it, you know, see what happens. So I use myself as just a walking poster child. Sometimes it's just like, hey, I went to therapy, I've had to be on medication before, and you didn't notice a difference in me. So it's possible that you can still get the help that you need and still maintain who you are as an individual.
That's awesome.
That's right. I'm like, I like that. I like that. I like your story, and I like that you're actually willing to share it with people. Because still, even though it helped, some people would still be too embarrassed or too ashamed to share things like that. So thank you.
I went through I don't mean to cut you off, but I had went through the opposite part of it as far as doing the approach my family's way. It said the time is almost up or something.
Yep. So any final words for everybody?
Oh. It said something about upgraded. I'm like, what's upgraded?
Yeah, I saw that too.
So wait, make
like I told you, we got a minute now left.
I was gonna say it's about to end. So any final words, real quick, ladies?
I just wanted to say, Deja, you mind if I call you Deja?
No, go ahead. That's all right. Yeah, Deja.
What was the what was the therapist's name that you met when you were 12?
Artina Mosley. And like I
Tina?
said, Artina Mosley.
Artina. So you
Artina.
are like a walking, you said poster child, you're like the walking Artina for everybody. Because I was, when you said that, you're like, oh my God, I was like, you actually embody her. Like what she did for you, it glows from you to spread for other people meeting you. This is my first time meeting you, and I get that effect. Like, oh my gosh.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Moon, thank you so much for this opportunity. This was great.
Absolutely.
No, I appreciate you guys coming on. We definitely are gonna have to do this again. I might actually purchase Zoom next time so we don't have to worry about this.
Exactly.
We're not getting together early so we can make it 40 minutes. You know, we can use the 40, just make it last.
Exactly.
But I appreciate you guys for coming on, and for all of my viewers, thank you for viewing. And don't forget to love yourself on purpose, everybody.
Absolutely.
We'll see you guys later.
Okay.